as with any cliffhanger, it's Romania Black. And as with any cliffhanger, I couldn't wait. We are on episode 8, lucky number 8. Lucky number 8. 8 for infinity, right? Of Steins Gate 0. And yeah, I couldn't wait after that cliffhanger. No. So, I'm actually, my brother got me, some dinner, we had a good chat, and now I'm like, okay, now we're gonna get down to brass tacks with this lovely ice from this restaurant that serves the good cubed ice, and we're gonna get down to episode 8 of Steins Gate. And I don't have any comments, but I did watch the English dub as I throw this Huckleberry, and I had a couple comments about that before we get started. Going back through the dub real quick, K6205, I realized they weren't in the dub. It's made a little bit clearer. They weren't talking about Kagari as that code name, as I had kind of interpreted it last episode, but instead it's the name of the group kidnapping her, which ties in to them saying like the magic flute is, it's sort of like what Ocarine was doing by giving his people code names and his organization's code names, which is, if it turns out that Ocarine from the future has been influencing Ocarine from the future, that's been influencing Ocarine from the present, I'm just gonna just flip the table at that point, right? But it just seems very similar, so who knows? Maybe whoever's doing this has a similar mindset. I don't know. I suspect it's Yuki that's responsible, but who is Yuki working with? That's the larger question. And then there's a really good scene that J. Michael Tatum and then the actor that plays Daru, they have this really good interaction in the English dub where Daru is like, do you think this is like the choice of Steins Gate or whatever that's called? And the way that J. Michael Tatum says Steins Gate, what nonsense. I'm like, oh, it's really funny because then you go back to episode 23 of the original series where, you know, Ocarina is like Steins Gate, and then by the end of episode 23, before episode 24 of the original Steins Gate, he's kind of embracing it, being like, yes, choice of Stein, yes, I'm crazy, and like all that stuff. So it's funny to see this version of Ocarina sort of throwing that to the side when the Ocarina we know that gets influenced by it, like embraces it fully. So be interesting to see if that happens later on in this series. We'll just have to put a pin in that. And then Amaho makes it very clear that there's a possibility someone has hacked Amadeus. I think it is her bespectacled friend that's my doppelganger, but I don't know. I don't know the motives. I just have suspicions. I've read enough Agatha Christie growing up to have suspicions, and I've watched enough Donmai to suspect everyone. So until they are proven innocent, it's like, usually it's innocent until proven guilty. In Romania's world, it's you're guilty until proven innocent. And then we go from there. So anyway, I hope you all enjoy this episode. I want to give a very quick shout out over to our philanthropy tier over on Patreon. If you are a patron, thank you so much for your support. I appreciate it beyond words. You all have no idea. And so I want to give a shout out over to Alex Cornejo, to Miss Yana Rose, as well as Be Happy, Dana, Damage3245, as well as Daniel Devorin, Destiny Marie, as well as Diana Williams, Ichu Eric, Fisho, Ghostly Turnip, James, Elfreya, Poppy, Jessica Cullen, Lyndon, Pancake, Murphy, Rast, Rose Jennison, Sunspots, Translucent Men, Shimoyama, Zero Anti-Zero, as well as Nicholas, Sean, and Jason N. Thank you all so much. I truly appreciate your support. All of my love. And if you're not on Patreon and you're just on YouTube and you're like, I have got no money to spare, that is understandable. But please, if you can't support me on Patreon, do me a favor and like that video down below and subscribe to my channel so that every Saturday or every other Saturday starting in May, you will get to see Steins Gate 0. So love that. Thank you. But yeah, we ended this episode on an insane cliffhanger where Ocarina has transitioned to another world line, and there's Kurisu. So what do we do now? That is the question, and we are going to find out with Steins Gate 0, episode 8, and we're going to get into that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's find out, shall we? This show is cruel. This show is so mean. You know what? Up until the last minute or so, up until then, I was thinking to myself, I'm like, this show is just mean. It's just making Ocarina be tortured by going back and do all these world lines, going back and forth. And I was like, why? How does that happen? What is happening? And I have a theory that I'm going to share with y'all about what I think is going on because, you know, Ocarine has the reading Steiner, as you know. But what I also think it's on the surface, you would be like, oh, well, this was just a throwaway episode. It's just an episode where it's a dream. It's just Ocarine. It's like a setup episode. It's taking apart. They're just taking us on a bypass from the mania that just happened last week and whatever. But no! When the last minute or so started to happen, I don't know if my reaction was as big as you all might have thought it was because the gears were turning in my head and I was like, oh my God. Because we're setting up everything that's going to happen in episodes 23 and 24 of the original Steins Gate. So we need to go back. So bear with me. We're going to be going on a journey ride with the theory because this episode was cruel. This episode was mean. This episode was sad. I don't like seeing Ocarine so distraught. And this episode was like, feast upon his tears. And I was like, I don't want to do that. So we have to get to this point where episode 23 is the point that we have to get to. And in the OG Steins Gate series. And in that episode, Ocarine has done a few things. He has made the choice. To save Mayuri. And doing that is at the cost of sacrificing Kurisu. And then he's very sad about it. And so then Suzuha shows up and she offers a way back to the very beginning to potentially save her. And that could possibly, like, if they go back to the past and they potentially save her, she's like, it could change everything in the timeline and possibly save both of them. And he's like, okay, I'll do it. And goes and does it. And, you know, I'm oversimplifying this part quite a bit. But then that mission fails. And then when he goes back, he is distraught and chooses to not save her and keep the timeline. And keep the timeline as is with Mayuri being saved. And this timeline here, through all that happening, leads to the World War III timeline. That is where we are at right now with Steins Gate 0. We are in the timeline where he chooses to stay by that, and it leads to World War III and the Time Wars and all that, and leads us to where we actually end up before all of this. So it's a big circular cycle. But what ends up happening in episode 24, is that when he goes back and fails Mayuri, as it were, Mayuri convinces Ocarine to keep trying to save her. And she inspires him to keep trying, and that is when Suzuha is able to reveal a message from himself, a message from Ocarine in the future that inspires him to stage Kurisu's death, keep the dad, this is the important part, keep the dad from getting the theory to Russia and starting the whole Time War thing, and also tricks the timeline and keeps both Kurisu and Mayuri alive. And this is, as we call it, the Steins Gate timeline. Or worldline, I guess. We'll put there, worldline. And that's what that leads to. So everything that we are doing right now, that this series is doing, is in the service of getting us to this point where Suzuha is able to reveal the message from Ocarine. This is the big part here. Everything that's happening in Steins Gate 0 is going to lead to him sending the note back to himself in the past to say, hey, don't give up, dummy. There's things you got to do. All this shenanigans that you've missed out on that we're watching in Steins Gate 0. He's like, don't let that happen. So yeah, that's what we're going to go back and get to. But what's interesting is that this episode kind of is involved in shaping some of the events that happen up here, which is crazy. So we need to establish a couple things in this episode, because I was at the very beginning being like, wait a minute, what are we doing? Are we staying in this timeline? Is the whole show changing? No, the whole show is not changing. And then I was kind of mad because I was like, well, was this a waste of time? It is not a waste of time. In fact, it's very important that this episode happens. And it's leading to some theories about what could possibly happen in the future. So we need to go back and talk about this episode. The episode is called The Duel of Antinomy. Antinomy. Not to be confused with antinomy or antinomianism, which we're not going to talk about. We're going to talk about antinomy. Antinomy. It is in philosophy, is from the Greek words anti or against and nomos, law. It's a real or apparent contradiction between two conclusions, both of which seemed justified. What else do you want to say? It is a term used in logic and epistemology, particularly in the philosophy of Immanuel Kant. Antinomy is a common form of argument in the dialogues of Plato. Kant credited Zeno of Elea, see Zeno's paradoxes, as the inventor of the antinomic mode of argumentation, which he described as a skeptical method of watching, or rather provoking, a conflict of assertions, not for the purpose of deciding in favor of one side or the other, but in investigating whether the object of controversy is not perhaps a deceptive appearance, which each vainly tries to grasp, in regard to which, even if there were no opposition, neither can arrive at any result. It was further developed by Fichte, Schelling, and Hegel. Hegel said that Kant was in error when he limited the antinomies to cosmical ideas, claiming the world itself contains contradiction. And Schopenhauer said that the antitheses in Kant's antinomies were justified, but claiming that these cosmic propositions were sophisms, which is tied to Socrates. So yeah, they can be found in Plato in substance but not in name. The modern use dates back to Immanuel Kant's Critique of Pure Reason, or CPR, not the life-saving breathing method. In the Transcendental Dialect, Kant defines antinomy as a conflict of laws. There's a whole big thing about antinomies in this, but the Kant says there are 4 specific ones that are limitations in the universe in respect to time and space, which seems pretty apt for this series. The theory that the whole consists of indivisible atoms, in which in fact none exist. The problem of free will in relation to universal causality. I'm getting Berserk vibes right off the bat there. And the existence of a universal being, which this series, we've had discussions of, is Ocarina God? Is he just immortal? Who's controlling time? Are they gods? Whatever. But in each antinomy, the thesis is contradicted by an antithesis. So in the first antinomy, Kant proves the thesis that time must have a beginning by showing that if time had no beginning, then an infinity would have elapsed up until the present moment. This is a manifest contradiction because infinity cannot, by definition, be completed by successive syntheses. Yet just such a finalizing synthesis would be required by the view that time is infinite. It's like, which came first, chicken or the egg? Essentially. So then it says, then he proves the antithesis that time has no beginning by showing that if time had a beginning, then there must have been an empty time of which the time arose. Wrap your mind around it. Let it soak. Let it simmer. You will have your brain fried in no time. This is incoherent for Kant for the following reason. Since necessarily no time elapses in the pretemporal void, then there could be no alteration, and therefore nothing, including time, would ever come to be. So the antithesis is proven. Reason makes equal claim to each proof, since they are both correct. So the question of the limits of time must be regarded as meaningless. People they just think about these things their entire life without definitive answer. It's just wild. They philosophize about this forever, right? But the point of this, which also Karl Marx talks about in his Das Kapital, Volume 1 chapter called The Working Day, he claims capital capitalist production sustains the assertion of a right to an unlimited working day and the assertion of a right to a limited working day, both with equal justification. Author James Ferner claims the thesis and antithesis of this antinomy are not contradictory opposites, but rather consist in the assertion of rights of say. Let's get into like capitalist stuff. We're not doing that here. But the point is that this episode deals in antinomy in the way that we have presented to Ocarine two scenarios, both of which suck. We have the scenario where Mayuri dies, and we have the scenario where Kurisu dies. And as of right now, they are both horrible. And we've now gotten to see kind of the, that was the one thing that I wondered when we dove into this series, because there was the question of Ocarine choosing to save Mayuri. And I'm like, well, what would have happened if Ocarine did not save Mayuri and he saved Kurisu instead? And we get our answer in this episode. And what it proves is, well, we're going to get to that because I feel like Ocarine, I feel like there was a little tiny moment in this episode where the gears shift and I'm like, Ocarine, figure it out. Put two and two together. And I think that this episode was the start of that. But if you want to go read about antinomies, I'm not going to waste any more of your time. But there's like a whole little page about it. And that was pretty much all the wiki anyway. So let's get into this episode. The duel of antinomy. I really like the idea that it's called the duel of it because it is which of the trolley problems are we going to choose? Which track are we going to choose? And the correct answer is we should choose neither of them. I'm going to pull this up here in 3, 2, 1. The correct answer is Ocarine should choose neither. He should not let either of them die. But the question is, how do we do that? Then how can we have our cake and eat it too? Because this is the episode, because what we've had here, if we go back up here to the top, is that now that we're in the World War III scenario, we've come to find out that Kagari exists, which is problematic, especially for the timeline. We also have the idea that there are time machines being made without, at least with CERN was keeping it all under wraps. That was kind of the big thing about the first series, is that CERN had made a time machine and didn't tell anybody and was doing things for their own gain, but nobody knew about it. So it was kind of like one of those, ignorance is bliss. You didn't know what they were changing. And they hadn't fully, succeeded in doing it to the length that Kurisu and Ocarine had. But then, here's the thing. Every time someone else, here's my theory, and we'll see if this series tests it, but I believe it's going to. Every time someone else uses a time leap machine or a time machine itself, it is going to activate the reading Steiner in Ocarine, and is going to send him into an alternate version of possibly the Alpha world line. And you may be saying to yourself, well, that's awful. And the answer is yes, it is. The series is going to torture us. But I feel like every time he goes there, any action taken is going to lead to the events that need to happen to get us to the Steingate world line. I think that's what's going to end up happening. I think that's what this all is him. He doesn't realize it yet. And what I love about this is that I've talked about it several times on this channel and otherwise. I love this idea of this nonlinear history. And what that means is that in the original series, it was very linear. This led to this, led to this, led to this. So when they were trying to undo everything, it was like, okay, if we undo this D-mail, then it goes back here. And if we undo this D-mail, it goes back here. And if we don't save Kurisu, it goes back here. And it was like trying to put back together the cup after it was smashed, right? Even though it's not going to be perfect, which is kind of what he's running into now. The cup can never be perfect again. So even when he gets it back the way it was before, there's these little cracks within it, which is these cracks in the world line, and why it's why they talk about in episode 24 how things are so like sensitive and he has to get to the right world line to make it all work. And the movie connects to that as well. But anyway, so with nonlinear history though, it's not just A goes to B, goes to C, and that's where we get up. It's that A is influenced by number 1 over here, and B is influenced by 2 and 3 over here, and C is influenced by 4 and 5 here. And so all of this history is influenced by other things that have helped to shape those specific core events. Like when 2000 happens and Suzuha stops by to change something with Y2K, and Kagari's like, what are you doing? And Suzuha's like, I'm ensuring that this one thing happens. Suzuha is not changing the past like in a very huge, giant way, but in just little ways, shaping the future through these little actions, right? So, for example, when Kurisu, in this episode, Kurisu decides to send the message back to herself at the end. It is actually this moment here, without realizing it, is what impacts the way that, let me see here, the choice made to save Mayuri. This moment right here leads him to this moment here to save her. So it makes your mind want to blow up because because the events of this episode are impacting the events of the original Steins Gate episode 23. The fact that because it's episode 22 is when this happens. In episode 22 of the original Steins Gate, she came to tell him that she loved him right at the very end, but he'd already pressed the button. In this episode of Steins Gate Zero, we find out that happened because of her actions in here that was happening in an alternate world line. So it's like, So if he hadn't gone, so again, if whoever is tampering with time hadn't caused him to go back to the Alpha world line, then him and her wouldn't have had this conversation, and she wouldn't have convinced him to send the message, which sends him back to the World War III timeline. But because of him doing that, it causes her to hesitate, which allows him to enable Mayuri to be saved, but then she says the I love you part, which then leads him to go to the actions episode 23, which it all just leads to each other. It's all just leading back to the causality of it all. It's like causality, free will, it's intermingling them all together, right? And it creates this big contradiction, and it's so freaking cool. The moment that last part where they sent the message and I realized what the message meant, and we saw that last minute, I was like, oh, all this is influencing it. So basically, this entire series to me, because we know that in the World War III timeline, people are tampering with time because the dad got a hold of the time machine algorithm and took it with him to Russia. There is a good chance that they've tampered with Amadeus, and we're going to talk about that here in a second. But every time they're messing with the timeline that's getting closer to World War III, it's going to lead Ocarine to go back and keep messing with things in the Alpha world line probably, that's going to lead to these events happening in episodes 22 and 23, which will lead to episode 24, and the timeline we all want, which is the one where they both live. It's so fun! I love it! Lucky number 8, right? And 8's my lucky number. We get unraveling time theory. We get Ocarina and Kurisu making out. Like oppa! It's just great! I'm loving it. But okay, we need to get back into this because I've talked for 7 minutes without even moving. So I was glad because at first with the timeline, I was like, it makes sense why Ocarina acts the way that he does. I was getting onto him, and I'm glad at the very end the show was like, shut up, here are them kissing. Are you happy now? And I was like, yes, actually. But Ocarina being completely stunned and being like, what is happening? And at first I was like, are you going to give her a damn hug? And then he did. And then he did give her a hug. And all the times that I've gotten mad at Ocarina for not showing affection, all those times that I've wanted him to give someone a damn embrace, he finally does it. And all of those moments where I was mad at him just washed away. Because, yeah, you've been, pining for this woman for 7 episodes, and here she is in front of you. Give her a damn hug. That's right. He gets to give her a hug. He gets to make out with her. We're having a great time. But it's so hard, because the way that, look, if you ship Mayuri and Ocarine, you are valid. You are valid in everything that you mean. And I get it. I get it. I see Ocarine and Mayuri as siblings. I see them loving each other like brother and sister on like a deep, like soul, like level bond. Like you could call them soulmates, I guess, platonic soulmates even. Do that. That's how I view them as well. Like Ocarine loves Mayuri on a level deeper than just romantic. He loves her on like a sibling spiritual level. He loves that woman. And so losing her is absolutely horrifying. And she's his childhood friend. He's so connected to her. Like losing her has absolutely devastated him to his core. So it makes sense why he's so sad. But then, you know, I feel like it's one of those things, he can't be so sad about Kurisu dying because she's right there in front of him during this episode. But then we've seen how he's reacted to her dying and how he's been struggling with it and kind of like coping through Amadeus and coping through Kagari. And he finally got to the point where he was ready to move on. And then here she is in front of him. So she's actually seeing him at a point where he's sort of moved on. We come to find out that like there is no surrogate for Mayuri to help him move on. Like, Kagari and Amadeus help him to move forward and accept Kurisu's death in that world line. But with Mayuri in the Alpha world line, there is no surrogate for Mayuri. And it's also exacerbated by the fact that with Kurisu, yeah, she knew Daru, she knew Mayuri, she knew the others, but she didn't have, like, an intimate bond with them. I think Ocarine was one she was the most connected to. So losing her, he's the one that gets the most devastated because he knew her the most. But with Mayuri, it's not just like him losing her. It's Daru losing her. It's Feiris and Fubuki losing her. It's Ruka losing her. Mayuri has all of these others that she's touched and made their lives better and impacted. And so like Mayuri has this big void left behind without her being there. And not to say that Kurisu doesn't have a void, but they barely knew her. Whereas Mayuri, they developed this big, long relationship with her. So it's interesting in this episode to see that impact, right? To see how much like Mayuri made a difference to all these people. And Ocarine kind of realized that too. And there's just no replacement. Amadeus is not Mayuri based. Could you imagine an AI being like, oh man, Ocarine, you didn't get that question right. I can do Mayuri impression. Oh, Ocarine. But yeah, I don't like seeing Ocarine this distraught. I don't like seeing it. Miyano Mamoru does an amazing job as Ocarine, by the way. Miyano Mamoru does a fantastic job of being him, of his voice. I cannot wait to hear J. Michael Tatum in it. It's going to be great. But Miyano Mamoru, when he gets like this gravelly, throaty, like angry voice, he does it so well. He does it really well, like the anguish in his voice. But yeah, so we also find out that this whole thing with Mayuri and them trying to piece things together and putting the like pictures of her up on the board. What I thought was interesting was that this picture right here. So in this picture, there's Yuki, and she's there in her like best Misa Amane cosplay in that, right? But that's so interesting to me is that she's present at the Comic-Con thing, which it feels like a little bit of a retcon from the movie, because in the movie, that's where he meets her. But again, they've kind of retconned her since the movie because she doesn't look exactly like Suzuha. What's interesting also is that Suzuha is not in this picture. She's not really in this version because she's traveling through time, presumably. Interestingly enough, I don't know. It's curious. I don't know if there's any significance to the red dot by Ocarine's head. I don't know. But yeah, and then the thinker here. Yeah. I feel like this episode is the inkling, the trace start of Ocarine maybe figuring out that he's going to need to fake the death. That in order to save both, we're going to get to it here in a little bit, there's something he has to do. And I'm going to talk about it here in a hot second because there's a line that Kurisu says that I was like, that's it. That's what it is. And so, but we're not there yet. But she's like, you haven't been here since Mayuri. Yep. You practically fell off the grid. I'm surprised that Hashida and her react so calmly to seeing him for the first time after a while. But there's little hints and clues, like with the GPS and everything, where I think they both were worried about him hurting himself without Mayuri there. And I think that they both were concerned. And I think that's why she had the GPS on his phone to try to track him, make sure he didn't do anything rash. That's my opinion. The show doesn't really confirm that, but that's like just an opinion of what could be. And he's like, is this the Alpha world line? And then he's like, where's the phone microwave? And she's like, you demolished it. Don't you remember? And so again, she's like, well, hang in there. So it's interesting that he ended up getting rid of, after he made the decision to save Kurisu, he got rid of the microwave, he got rid of the time leap machine, and he did the exact same thing he did here with Kurisu. He just decided to let it go, except he was settled with Kurisu being there and let Mayuri go. But what's interesting about it is that, in both scenarios, in this, if we had stayed in the Alpha world line and Mayuri had died, it would have drove Ocarine insane, and he would have just distanced himself from everyone in the lab, including Kurisu, who he loves, distance from her, distance from Daru, and just kind of self-implodes. Which, when you compare it to this world line we're in now, we started out the episode with he distanced himself from Mayuri, whom he loves, distanced himself from Daru, distanced himself from the lab. So he's doing the exact same thing, just to different extents. It's just that in the world line, the beta world line that we're in now, Amadeus exists and Kagari exists to be reminders of Kurisu, so he doesn't fully forget, and he keeps those like remnants of her memory there with him. So yeah, just crazy talk. And he's like, it's no different than yesterday, but this is the one that results in Mayuri's death. And so it says here, okay, from Daru to Okabe Rentaro, she's being taken to the hospital. They say it's probably a heart attack. That's what the paramedic said. Her parents are on their way to the hospital too. Also the fact that her parents are still alive, I was fully convinced that Mayuri did not live with her parents and that she was an orphan. I forget her parents exist in this timeline. The parents are even mentioned because they're rarely mentioned at all. I forget about that. So I think that's a point of contention too. At least we don't know about Kurisu's mom, but her dad is an absolute jerk. And so he obviously would not care because he tried to kill her himself. So I don't know what to make with that, but it's an interesting note. Even if we escape the grasp of CERN, as long as we're in this world line, Mayuri will be killed. And that's why he's like, but why am I back here? Why did ringing Steiner kick in? There wasn't a D-mail. I didn't use the time leap machine either. That's the thing. It's not going to matter as long as like, oh, Kurisu's dad or somebody on the other side of the world uses the time leap machine. It's still going to affect him. He just won't have control of it, which is why that's so scary. And then, yeah, that's when Daru finds him. So, and even Daru's like really timid and trepidatious with him. Like just they're toeing on eggshells. Like they're trying to treat him because they know how upset that he was. I am glad that Daru stuck up for Mayuri though, because, you know, Fubuki, you can tell that Ruka and Ferris and Fubuki are having a hard time dealing with Mayuri's death as well. But Ferris is a real one. Can we talk about Ferris just being kind of amazing? That she's literally handling this so well. Like, she's like, she was very dear to me. And since, you know, and she's like, oh, Fubumiyao's been helping out the cafe since Mayuri left because Mayuri would be happier this way. And she's like, here's a picture of us at Summer Komima. She was as spunky as ever. It just seems wrong with her. She was just being herself. And then Ferris is like, hey, remember what I said? Like, you know, she would have liked this. Like, Ferris was being so nice. Ferris was doing the right thing of trying to, like, say, hey, Mayuri would have wanted this. You know, let's all do it for Mayuri. Let's not get too... Like, she's trying her best to make good of a situation. And then Ocarine brings up this concept of, what if we had a world where she was going to live? And I love that Daru gets mad at him. And Daru's like, you're the one that destroyed the computer. You're the one that destroyed all the equipment. You're the one that said we needed to move on. You made this choice. This was your choice to let her die and Kurisu live. Why would you go back now? Do you know what that means to try to go back on that? And that's kind of how he feels, which is so wild because that's how he feels in the current timeline. Because Suzuha's trying to be like, go back and try to save her. And Okarine's like, I can't do that. It was my choice. I can't go back and try it again. It'll just lead to heartbreak over and over again. Both of these options do the same thing, right? Again, it's just interesting because Kurisu doesn't have the relationship that the others had with Mayuri. So you don't get to see all these people kind of lashing out the same way with Kurisu's death as we see with Mayuri, because they barely even knew her in that timeline. They're like, we had the data cracked and you stopped it. And he's like, you couldn't press the key. You kept saying it over and over again. I'm the one who killed Mayushi. I'm the one who made that choice. Why did you trash the phone machine, microwave, and the time leap machine? If you were going to regret it later, you should have kept it intact. Makise said, this was the one part. There were two parts in this episode that made me go, okay, this is leading to the events that are going to affect episode 24. The first one was Kurisu saying, we had a chance. We can try again. That is just like that timeline. Because in episode 23 of the original Steins Gate, at the very end of the episode, Mayuri in that version says, Mayuri goes, hey, we can... you need to keep trying to save her. And then in this episode, episode 8 of Steins Gate 0, we have Kurisu trying to do the same. And what's crazy about it is, going back to this nonlinear history sort of thing, is at the time, Ocarine doesn't do anything with what Kurisu tells him, because he doesn't have, there's not the time machine, there's not Suzuha, there's no, what would he go back and change? What would he go back and do? He doesn't know, so he has nothing to do with what she says. By the time we go back to episode 23, and Mayuri convinces him to keep trying, there is something that gives him some ground to stand on, and that's that video that gets sent to him from the future. So we're building to it. We're building to it slowly but surely, right? But that was one of the moments that made me go, okay, we're building back to getting back to episode 23. So anyway, Daru talks to Kurisu, and I get the impression that they both care so much about Ocarine, but they treat him with such eggshells, because I think they know that things are not stable with him at all. He asked if we knew if there's a world where she could live. I couldn't believe he said that after everything that had happened. And that's when she thinks about where he sat, and she's like, okay, this is not the Ocarine that we knew. This is an Ocarine from a different world line. I love her peacoat. It's adorable. It's great. And she's like, your phone has GPS. She's like, so you don't know it all. And she's like, you're from another world line, aren't you? Mm-hmm. So duel of antinomy, antinomic duel. And that's when she reveals, she's like, if you were really the Ocarine from this timeline, you would not be sitting where Mayuri always sat, because you'd feel too guilty about that. And she reveals that she has been remaking the phone microwave and the time leap machine. She's like, we're going to change the world lines. The fact that she was already making these shows that she was planning on doing it anyway. She was like, I'm going to do it anyway. She was going to do it to herself. She was going to send the message back she was going to get his phone and take the message back to herself so that she could stop it to save him. Kurisu is such a damn real one. Can we talk about that? She was willing to sacrifice herself again and die again, because she couldn't bear to watch the man that she loves suffering and wallowing in misery. Like, the triangle between Ocarine, Kurisu, and Mayuri is insane. It's insane. Because you have Ocarine that inspires Mayuri to keep going after the death of her grandma. You have Mayuri, who inspires Ocarine to keep trying after the death of Kurisu. You have Kurisu, who inspires Ocarine to inspire Mayuri during the movie. Then you have Ocarine. Then you have her also trying to get him to go back and save Mayuri, so that it's so good. It's great. But she was intending to do this because she'd been working on it for some time, and she's like, you got to go back. You've got to go back to the world line that you came from. Rather, you're from a world line where you were able to keep her alive. And she's like, well, of course, I've watched you for so long. She's like, not in the way that you're thinking, but you're Okabe Rentaru from another world line. Mm-hmm. And she's like, but it's true Mayuri's able to live, but even a world like that changed so easily. And I think this is what is really getting onto Ocarine and like kind of cracking him in this moment, because he had finally gotten to a world line he could accept. He could accept sacrificing 1 billion people to World War III, but he had saved Mayuri. And even then, he's like, I worked so hard to get here and be satisfied, and okay with the decisions that I made. And even then, in that world line, now I can't do anything to stop time from changing and other people messing with it. I just wanted things to just be. And they can't in this world line either. So the one where Mayuri dies, I'm miserable. But the one where you die and it's still not able to be as I want it, I'm miserable too. He's like, so what do I do? And we're getting to that. He's like, it changed back without me doing anything. I did nothing at all. But why did it end up this way? And then he's like, I took the you who loved me and I made you disappear. That's such a line. He's like, and yet you're trying to tell me to kill you again. He's like, I can't do it. And I think Kurisu is just like, well, she's like, but watching you suffer like this is what could be worse? You're alive and I'm alive here to see you, but it's like neither of us can celebrate because you're so miserable from losing your best friend. Like, she's like, what am I going to do about that? She's like, I remind you. And it's kind of one of those things where I'm such a shipper of Ocarine and Kurisu, but at the same time, every time she looks at him in this world line, if he had saved her, it's like, she can't be with him because every time he looks at her, he's reminded of he's killed his best friend. And it's like, so this episode is the answer to what would have happened. And it's not fun either way. So she said he'd be back. In the end, we should have known he could have never forgot Mayuri. And she's like, yep, making these decisions. And so then as day breaks, she's like, I need you to come with me. She's like, we're going to the station. And at first I was kind of sad because he spent all this time trying to get to her. And then he finally got the chance to see her. But again, it just shows that wave of guilt that has washed over him that keeps him from being able to move forward with their relationship. And she's like, why? She says the law states even a gaze could be considered sexual harassment. And he's like, Amadeus has nothing on you. And she's like, I'm glad we get this, first of all, where she acknowledges Amadeus because she had been working on it before she went to Japan. So she's like, wait, you've met Maho? You've done this? Like, that part was great when he told her about it. And she's like, oh. And he explains what happened in the situation. And she's like, I can't imagine AI having anything to do with the world line change. No, I don't think it was Amadeus directly, but I do think that if someone was able, because she points out that she's had the theory of the time machine all along. So we know that her dad has the time machine papers, but if the professor's friend, bespectacled friend who's my doppelganger, can access Amadeus and ask, because Amadeus is an AI. Amadeus is not Kurisu. It acts on their memories. And even though they say it's human, it is a chat GPT in the end. And whenever they're like, so Amadeus, what's your thought about time machine? If you were making a time machine, how would you do it? The real Kurisu would be like, I'm not telling you, you're shady. But Amadeus would be like, well, I don't know exactly how I would do it, but here's my formulaic, and this is my formulaic tabulation of how it could happen. And then they just write it down. You know, so I feel as if there's a chance that Amadeus is being used to help others who are against Kurisu's dad, which is in itself the idea that the AI based off the memory of a woman that her own father tried to kill to get time machine papers is being used to help other people make time machines is just wild. I do think that Amadeus is a part of this all, but not the one behind it. All the memories are stored within it, so it means my time machine theory would be there as well if it was hacked. Yep. And he's like, you guys answered differently. Now, this part here, where he sees the dad take away the paper, there were several moments, this is one of them, where I was waiting for Ocarine to connect the dots and for the light bulb to go off, and we, the audience, aren't shown if he did have the light bulb moment or not. We just see that he's thinking about that moment where the dad took the time machine paper. She's like, I can't believe you made friends with Maho Senpai, how stubborn she is and clumsy. And he's like, that part of her hasn't changed. Now, she does say that Maho likes jasmine tea, so I'm wondering if Ocarine in the future will get Maho some jasmine tea to make her be persuaded to listen to him. We'll see. We'll see, or to believe him that he's talked to Kurisu. So anyway, she takes him to the gravesite, and it's just like exposure therapy to trauma. The part where his eyes darted and he was starting to have a panic attack, I'm like, show. This is not fun. Life is not déjà vu in this moment. But he goes there to the grave. And then she's like, other people have been here too. You are a wreck after Mayuri died. You stopped going to the lab and the college, and you stayed here till the sun went down. And the idea of him just sitting there with like his stubble like up against the grave like Mayuri was, just without the umbrella. And she even brings an umbrella to go get him. You were waiting for someone to take you to the heavens. Which is how he found Mayuri whenever her grandmother died. So I feel like, to me, it's symbolic of this familial love that Ocarine and Mayuri had. That he loved her just like family, like she loved her grandmother. She's like, I couldn't do anything for you. You did it so I could live. She's like, at this rate, you're going to be crushed by guilt. She's like, I love you, and I'm not going to watch the man that I love be absolutely crushed. She's like, no. She's like, you can't be consoled by me because I remind you too much of her. She's like, so we got to go back and change this. She's like, I can't see you like this. And then he's like, but the feeling doesn't change. And she's like, you need to get a hold of yourself. And she's like, stop making that face. The Hyoen Kyoma, I know, you've got to be confident and strong. And he's like, that's all a facade. It's all a lie. That part hurt the most because the whole time in Steins Gate, we got used to him being like, I'm Hyoen Kyoma and like all this. And here he just drops it. He's like, that was all a lie. It was just hiding my own insecurities and fears. Which makes his kind of like connection back to it in episode 23 even better. It's all just a big act. I just did it to cheer Mayuri up. And she's like, I feel the same way. You made the right choice. The only thing wrong in this world line. You have to return. This is just a dream. Which is an interesting line. Do we treat it as just a dream because we are impacting the actual timeline? Or is she acknowledging that this world line shouldn't be the definitive one? And he does like the sunlight handshake in that moment. I hate it. I hate seeing Ocarine so sad about frickin' Mayuri. I don't blame him, though. After everything he's been through. Ugh. So she's like, when you wake from your dream, forget all about me. And he's like, there's no way I can. And she's like, but that's what I want. And then she says, I don't know what caused your world line to change this time. It's about Amadeus. It's obvious time machines are involved somehow. She's like, Amadeus is clearly involved. I completed my time machine theory after meeting you. I can't guarantee the same won't happen there. I like that she points out, she's like, yeah, if you and Amadeus keep interacting, there is a very good chance Amadeus will complete the time machine theory and someone else will find it. But here's the thing. Kurisu in this world line has no clue how long and to the depths her and Ocarine have talked. So even though Ocarine's given her the rundown, she may not know quite how frequently they've interacted. So it may have already happened. But she's at least given a clue to the moment. But then there's this line here where she's like, it's a pinky promise. Lie and I'll stab an electrode into your hippocampus. Which, he's like, that was lame. But she gives it back and says, don't come in. He could have pressed cancel. I kept waiting for them to accidentally press cancel. And she's like, do you remember how we first met? Grabbing and tugging at my clothes. I thought you were some sort of pervert. This is the moment. And he's like, oh. He's like, I see. From her perspective, that's how we first met. It's the same both ways. So in order to change it to where they both live, we have to change the perspective. We have to change the perspective. So that leads to the events of episode 23, where Ocarine's video is you have to make it look like Kurisu dies, but she does not. You've got to trick yourself. You've got to trick your own self and make the perspective look like she's dead when we, the audience, know that's not exactly how it was. Yeah! And I keep thinking, like, this is the moment. Again, the light bulb should go off, but it doesn't. He's like, wait. And she's like, everything's ready. So I'm hoping that this will all click and the light bulb will go off, but I don't know if it will or not. I don't know if that's going to happen, but it should. I wish it would. And then, yeah, she gets it all synced up, and he's hesitating because he's like, I'll go back to that world line, but instead I lose her right there, and Curiously's gone because I kill her, my most precious. And I think in that moment she realizes that he does love her and how hard this decision is because he really doesn't want her to go. But she also knows that this Ocarine is not the same Ocarine as before that was in the world line with her up until this point, and also knows that this has to happen so he doesn't, make himself even worse. And I love that she kisses him and he kisses her back. I love that. I mean, good. He's gone 7 episodes without her. Good. Why is this show the most romantic anime I have watched in a long time, and it's not even a romantic genre? It's not even a romance genre. It's really not. And it's got more romance in it than half of the romance anime I've watched this year. We need some more yaoi on this channel. Romania's gone through some dry spells. But yeah, what a smooth move, girl. She's like, I'm so glad I met you. And here's the thing. He ain't gonna forget that. He's gonna remember that because he's the Ocarine, he's the Alpha, the Omega, the Sigma. He remembers all of the world lines. And then goodbye. Oh, the tear is too much. Nope. And then we get the idea that her sending the message caused her to pause just a moment in episode 22 so he can make the choice. And then she disappeared. Oh my God. And then Suzuha showed up. But yeah. Crazy. I love that she gets the message to not come in, and she still went in anyway. She hesitated for a moment and long enough for him to press the button, but then she went in and told him that she loved him. Here I was thinking that this episode would not be of, value. And as you can see, it's all connecting back. So now Ocarine's going to be back in the beta world line with Maho and the others. So the question is, what are we going to do now? And the question is this going to be a tradition where every time these people over here that should not be messing with time mess with time, Ocarine's going to go to a different world line and have to get his way back to the beta so that he can get his way back to the Steins Gate. So he can get his back. He's got to go back to the beta to get back to the alpha to get to the Steins Gate. It's clear. It's clear as mud, right? Of course it is. Clear as day. Easy to understand. Very simple concepts that are easy to understand in this show. Anyway, other concepts I'm curious to know are your comments down below of what you thought of this episode and all of these shenanigans. 8's my lucky number, and it did not let me down. So, with that in mind, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll see you all very soon with more of Steins Gate Zero. Bye!